Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping into a beer from a brewer that just brews top tier beers. We haven't done a ton of reviews of their beers on this channel, a handful of IPAs, maybe a few other styles, but I have had quite a few and I really like all of the beers that I've had. This is the first porter that I've had from them, and this today is going to be from Lupulin Brewing Company, based in Big Lake, Minnesota. This specific porter is called Imperial CPB. That is an Imperial chocolate peanut butter. This is an Imperial Oatmeal stout. They just classify Imperial porter on the packaging, but on the back they do make a note that it is an oatmeal porter. 10% ABV on this one, and of course added chocolate and peanut butter. So a big ABV on a big oatmeal beer. Now what I'm kind of expecting is, since this is an oatmeal porter base, that maybe this one will be a bit better than the average in terms of head creation and retention. Oats, easily the #1 ingredient to add to your beer if you're looking for good head creation and retention. That's just the way that it is. So I'm hoping, even though porters tend to be quite active and can often collapse them a little too soon, that this oatmeal back will help boost it up. So Lupulin always has really inventive artwork on their labels. This one, very colorful, kind of brown, orange, yellow, very intricate designs, looks very neat. Not much else to talk about there, so we're going to get this cracked gently. All right, and poured right into the old porter glass. All right. This one's pouring reasonably thick for a porter. They don't always pour super thick. This is, of course, a 10% ABV. That is not light by any stretch. Let's see, visually? Yeah, even right in front of the light, yeah, it's absolutely pitch black, as you would expect. And obviously, it did form a beautifully big, thick, lush, creamy head here. I'll tell you, pretty big aroma on this. When I started to move it from here over out in front of my light, I could already start picking up aromas. So we're going to get right up over this to see what jumps out. Oh, it's just huge. It is huge. So the peanut butter on this, as well as the chocolate, are very pronounced. So it almost puts me in mind of like a chocolate peanut butter cup. That's kind of the aroma I'm getting off of this. Though this is not a milk porter, well, I presume it's not. It said nothing about a lactose addition on there. So I'm expecting a rich, dark porter base here, but the additives really jump out. The peanut butter in particular is very pronounced. It's got a really big peanut, nutty, roasty note coming in with it. And frankly, the underpinning of this malt bill with its roasty notes is really pairing with that. So it smells absolutely fantastic. Head is settled a little bit, but it's still holding nice and true. Let's just jump right in, see what this one's about. Ooh, yeah. That is a big, bold, flavorful beer. Wow. Big, roasty, rich, exactly as advertised. This is exactly as advertised, and honestly, it's exactly what I was hoping it would be. So when you first swallow, it's a big beer. It's got a lot in it. There is a suggestion of sweetness just because of how big it is and because of these flavors are being so big and bold and you can pick them out. But frankly, chocolate and peanut butter are two good ingredients that'll pop out of almost any beer style anyway, just because of the way that they bind with a malt base. Sure, you can add lactose in there if you want to turn it into a milk version of the beer, but it's really not called for if you're going for a chocolate peanut butter vibe, especially in a dark beer base like a porter. This is very nice. So immediately behind that, it is just big peanut butter and chocolate notes. The peanut butter in this is not candy-like. It's like actual peanut butter itself. So it's very roasty. Very noticeable roasted peanut vibe coming off of this peanut butter. And it pairs extremely well with the added chocolate. Again, it's roasty and it's binding with the roast characters in the underpinning malt bill. Very roasty. This is one of those that is a porter that I always hope that I'm going to get. There's no weird, funky off flavors at all. There's no kind of like bad spoiling raisins. It's just a classic, rich, roasty underpinning malt bill that just pairs perfectly with this hugely roasty peanut butter and the nice roasty chocolate notes. And on this, there is actually a decent kick of bitters. It's coming, at least what tastes to my palate, largely out of the peanut butter, but also a little bit of kind of some underlying earthiness coming off of the malt bill itself. And this is a roasty kind of earthy malt bill. There's no real coffee overtones or anything like that, which would be relatively common in a darker roast beer. This one is almost exactly as it says on the label. It's just a chocolate peanut butter porter. There's nothing else weird about it. It's just very well done, and it's big. No real undertones or overtones of any other additives or flavors. It's just a big Imperial chocolate peanut butter porter. It's extremely well done. I'm really, really pleased with how roasty it is and how big and bold these flavors are. They're big. So I'm going to jump back in. We'll get our second sip. We're going to pick apart to make sure I didn't miss anything on the re-intensification. Talk about the body and mouthfeel and the balance in the finish. But first sip, it's delicious. Take two. Yeah, again, up front, very first, slight suggestion of sweetness, just big intensity of flavor, big peanut, big chocolate, very roasty, very earthy. The underpinning of the malt bill really starts to come in. So on re-intensification here, nothing I didn't get on the first sip, it just comes at you again. In terms of the body and the mouthfeel, the body on this one, it's kind of a solid medium, bordering on the low end of medium heavy. It's not quite as weighty as I would expect for a 10% Imperial Porter, but it's definitely got some heft to it. It's above average, but maybe not quite as top tier as you would expect for the ABV range. Mouthfeel on this one, this is not one of those porters that feels super effervescent on the palate. Indeed, it gets quite creamy when you agitate around the palate, so it gets very, very silky. Not exactly the norm for a porter, but this having that oatmeal back, that is definitely going to play a big part. And frankly, texturally, I like it better. I think it's very, very nice. So you can't really feel just constant active carbonation all over the palate, but you can really feel this nice, thick resistance and this silkiness, this real nice creaminess that just adds to the layering of texture. It's very, very nice. In terms of the overall balance, I got to say, I love it. I love what they did with this. They're not doing anything crazy with it. It's just a big Imperial Porter oatmeal base with chocolate and peanut butter, and the ratios are fantastic. To let the underlying malt bill in this beer speak and do its thing, and then pair it with big, intense flavors that they chose and have everything pop out, yeah, that's how to balance a beer, guys. This is really, really good. Maybe it leads a little bit with the peanut butter, but it just works so well in this beer. I don't mind that it pops out first, and then it is the element that kind of gives the biggest staying power in here. It's nice to have that presence and it tasting so good. Whatever peanut butter they used, I don't know if it's their own in-house, made natural, whatever, but it's really, really good. Very good beer. In terms of the finish, this one's a little longer than you would expect on your average porter. And it really is kind of coming out of two parts. It's owing to the overall intensity of the added flavors in this beer in conjunction with the fact that there's actually a decent kick of earthy and roasty bitters coming out of this one. That being said, it's really just kind of on the high end of average, maybe low end of above average. It's not as long as you would expect, given how pungent this beer is. But it is, longer than the norm. So overall, I think this is an excellent, excellent porter package. It's very well done. The balance is beautiful. It's just truly delicious, well put together. It's not super complicated, but what they did, they executed very, very well. I'm going to take my time, sip on this one, call my scores. When we come back, we'll get this beer ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that we've gotten to enjoy this beer, we're going to get it ranked. This was Lupulin Brewing Company's Imperial CPB and Imperial Oatmeal Porter, clocking in at 10%. This one brewed with chocolate and peanut butter. Lupulin Brewing is based in Big Lake, Minnesota. So, really, really good beer here. Absolutely delicious. I love a good porter, and this was a big, truly great one. So, we're going to start right at the top with the aroma. The aroma on this was absolutely pungent. You could really smell, in particular, that peanut butter. It just jumped right out of this beer. But you could also still smell the underlying roasty malt bill and the chocolate as well. Absolutely fantastic balance of aromas coming out of this beer, and very, very big. The aroma does get a perfect 10 out of 10. For the taste, they nailed it with this one. I mean, this is exactly what I was hoping it would be. Big beer, big bold flavors, tons of roasty undercurrents, and with a nice porter base with something big and roasty like chocolate peanut butter added in the mix, made for a big, rich, roasty beer. I absolutely loved it. Taste gets a 10 out of 10. For the body actually surprised me a little bit. 10%, it's not stratospheric for an Imperial, but that's double digits still. It's a porter. You would expect it to have a bit more heft than it did. This really was just kind of a getting on the full side of medium, but it really didn't even get into big, medium, heavy territory. So not quite as weighty as I anticipated. Just high end of average here. Body gets a 6 out of 10. For the mouthfeel. The mouthfeel was a different story altogether. This actually, aside from not, which is very common, you'll get very active and clear effervescence all over the palate. Doesn't have to be. This one actually felt even nicer because it got quite silky, quite creamy, and it really had a nice bit of resistance. Almost exactly what I expected for the ABV. I only docked 1 point here. The mouthfeel gets a 9 out of 10. For the finish, this was a long finish on this beer, as you might have expected. Big beer with big, bold, intense flavors, and had a nice actual kick of underlying earthy bitters as well, and a lot of lingering roasty notes. That really drove the length of the finish out longer than your average Imperial Porter. In this one, it really came down to the added flavors as the driving factor. Finish gets a 7 out of 10. For the head and retention, this one did a pretty good job overall. Definitely above average here. I would have liked a little more retention, especially considering that this was an oatmeal porter base, but still well above average. Head and retention gets an 8 out of 10. For the appearance, this was pitch black, perfect 10 out of 10. The balance. Talked about this a lot as I was drinking this beer and when we talked about the taste, but the balance, I think they absolutely nailed on this beer. Whatever malts and the ratios they used, same thing in tandem with the chocolate and the peanut butter, whatever specifics and the volumes they used really made for a wonderfully balanced beer. I absolutely loved it. Balance gets a 10 out of 10. Feeling in the intangible, subjectively, I loved it. 10 out of 10. Finally, as an example of the style. So this beer did extremely well across most categories, only lost a few minor points in a few categories, but I really do think that this is a great example of how to do a flavored Imperial Porter right, and I did give it full points here. So example of style, 10 out of 10, which brings the total score on Lupulin Brewing Company's Imperial CPB to a 90 out of 100. Well above average beer. And this is another one of those where I'll say, okay, 90 out of 100. Yes, it is a really good score. But if you're one of those people that maybe watches with regularity, oh, I'll skip anything below X, do yourself the favor. Definitely worth it. Especially if you like big Imperial Porters or just in general chocolate peanut butter beers. This was extremely well done. I absolutely loved it. Really, really well put together beer that just checked all the boxes for me. Folks, that's today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live, just turn on your notifications, toggle on that bell icon. It is right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.